Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is October the 30th. 2020 strong hand, long term thinking. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin, unconfiscatable. I'm offended by selling. Hello, my elite friends. It's the day before Halloween. It's the last This Week in Bitcoin show before the United States election that everyone's been talking about for 2 years. Oh no, it won't be corrupt. There won't be any Canadians in California voting. We got a Canadian in California. Kyle is here. JW is in the house. And Surfer Jim, is on the East Coast. Oh, what a time to be alive during this golden age. If you guys have questions for the panel, type in the super chat, type in Bitcoin Meister, do the usual. All right, I'm still pumped from Charlie Lee being on the show. Now, the big news of the week, and that was yesterday, so check out the archives, dude. But best freaking guest in the space. These dudes are just as awesome as Charlie. Okay, so big news that everyone was talking about at the beginning of the week, and we will get to current events, by the way, because all three of these dudes that are on the show right now are strong-handed Bitcoiners who were never scared by all the hysteria that's been on TV in February. All these guys have been freaking great. So it all came together perfectly that before, because it might all disappear, all the hysteria might disappear on Wednesday after the election's over, the way things are going. So these guys have been strong-handed the whole time. But, okay, so Michael Saylor's got a freaking lot of Bitcoin, okay? He straight up told the world that he's got over 17,000 freaking Bitcoin himself, okay? So this guy has been put on a pedestal by everyone, and I was saying, like, you can't worship the dude, but even this was like, whoa, man, you were so hardcore. You just didn't get it for your freaking business. You understand what scarcity is. You spent 9 figures on freaking Bitcoin. You now personally own almost 0.1% of all the Bitcoin circulating out there. So I see JW's tweeting nice things about Saylor. And before the show, I was even joking. I'm like, that's pretty cool because, JW, he doesn't say nice things about anybody. So JW, welcome back, man. I'm so glad to have you back here. Take it away. What do you think about the overall Michael Saylor MicroStrategy situation? And give us your take.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that people are saying about it, as far as being excited that somebody that has a good track record of being successful, it's kind of like Jack, Twitter Jack coming out and saying good things about Bitcoin. It's a big step because there aren't very many billionaires that are saying good things about Bitcoin, right? You can count them on one hand. And what's amazing about Saylor, I think, other than the fact that he's a technology guy, so he came up to speed super quick. I mean, he just gets how networks work. He understands. He didn't have to go through a scam coiner phase, right? He didn't have to touch Litecoin or any of the retarded scams that people have pushed. So that's very encouraging. The other thing that's been awesome about this is that he's going in way harder than anybody else has, right? For a guy with a significant net worth, I mean, I just Googled his net worth. That can be way off, but it says 500 million, right? I think that's
be more.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's clear that he's put a huge chunk of, I don't think he's got 10 billion, right? So for him to put in a $250 million of his own money and then $500 million of the company that he owns most of, this is a large percentage of his net worth now is in Bitcoin. And this isn't some weirdo, right? This is a respected, CEO, 20 years or something, running MicroStrategy, publicly traded company, respected company. So I think it is as big of a deal as people think it is. And the hope is that, Square following suit with their investment is huge. But I think he kind of represents 2 huge narratives, right? Or 2 huge, let's say, paths for adoption. One is high net worth individuals putting in significant skin in the game, which is like we haven't seen that before, right? The other is corporations taking a significant portion of their treasury and putting it into Bitcoin. And if you had asked me 2 years ago whether I thought that was possible, I would have said no. I don't think that these corporations that are so beholden to government and live off government favors are going to spit in the face of the Fed and that entire network when they need it, right? Like the last thing I would want to do if I was the CEO of a publicly traded company is piss off the Fed right now. I need them buying my bonds. I need them pumping up my stock because they're the only consumer that exists, right? If I'm an airline, I'll put transgender kids on advertisements. I don't care about the consumer. I don't care if parents don't want to have to put a mask on a 6-month-old. None of that matters to me. The only thing that matters is keeping the Fed happy because they're my purchaser, right? They're buying my bonds, they're printing money and giving it to me when I need it. Everything else is bullshit. It's a nationalized economy. That's the way I would look at it. But I'm a super cynical, crusty old guy. But Saylor obviously doesn't, right? I mean, he's just completely gone the other way, and that's been totally shocking to me. And it's not just Saylor because his company's publicly traded. He's got investors like BlackRock that are involved. He didn't do this without getting their approval, right? Yes, he has 78%, but you're not going to make a move like this and piss off your other investors and risk lawsuits and all kinds of other things. So he's connected into that world, and for him to make this big of a move, I think it's rightly shocking to us that it's a realistic possibility.
Really redefine what going all in means. I mean, even though he probably still has a significant amount of wealth that's not in Bitcoin, it's amazing. It's amazing. But what do you think? You're a security guy. He straight up admitted how many Bitcoin he had. What do you think about that from OPSEC perspective?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was like, yikes. But my second thought was, you know what? At the level that he's playing at, if he can get other billionaires to adopt it and other corporations to go in on it, that's probably a better move for his own personal security. Like I'm sure he's spending 7 figures on guys with AR-15s as it is. Yeah, I mean, a lot of security comes down to politics, right? Like you wouldn't think somebody like Gaddafi could have lived for more than a few weeks without getting taken out. But you've got enough politics, you've got enough powerful people that are trying to support you. And I think in a way that may kind of, be another sort of narrative shift, right? Where it's like there's safety in crowds. And by him going out there and trying to attract other people to get in on this, I mean, we are definitely witnessing a massive revolution, right? And you never want to be the first guy with the beret, but if you're gonna be, you might as well get the other guys following you as soon as possible. So I think he may have thought it through like that. I mean, but this is a huge blow, right? For a corporation to hold. I mean, imagine if they went in all in on Chinese yen or RMB or whatever, right? Like that's a huge statement of alliance. And for a U.S. corporation to really say we're effectively leaving the nation of the United States of America, right, with our assets, and we're putting them into this other non-nation state store of value is a pretty big deal. So I mean, he had to have a lot of stones to do the first thing that he did, which was make these investments in the first place. So I'm not totally shocked that he's got the stones to say, I'm doing it with my personal wealth, and you guys should follow me. So it's bold, it's impressive, but I think if it works and we do get a lot of Bitcoin adoption, he's going to be a lot safer than just trying to keep it secret, which is pretty much impossible anyway at those amounts.
It's better to be the first than the last, and if it works out like we think it might, his corporation is going to be incredibly wealthy. He's going to be incredibly wealthy. It's amazing, and it's a huge story, and we're going to get back to it in a second. But I want to get to Kyle, as everyone can see. They're coming for him. I think that's the he is outside in the corrupt state of California, where no doubt he's going to vote 8 times on Tuesday, even though he's a Canadian. But that's what's going down in California. But what is your take on this Michael Saylor owning all this Bitcoin and passing it to the world?
And until that whole MicroStrategy thing, I'd never even heard of Michael Saylor before. And then I guess with this announcement too that he personally owns 17,000 Bitcoins, I was like, yeah, from an OPSEC point of view, it's like, whoa, bro, painting a major target on yourself. But alas, like JW mentioned, like he'll be okay, and he's got the funds to protect himself. This is something that I have been like preaching to heads of big businesses and industries and even central banks as a strategy of add crypto and add Bitcoin to your reserves. By not owning any, you are you are underexposed to it, and you're taking a risk by not owning any. For them to come out with that bold strategy of saying we want to own, what was it, 0.1% was like, you know, their rationale. You know, they're taking a hyper speculative bet, and I feel like they've just turned that company into a passive investment vehicle for Bitcoin. So based on their holdings, by investing just directly into MicroStrategy, you are effectively gaining exposure to crypto or to Bitcoin. So, you know, that's really interesting. And I also think that this represents something called a prisoner's dilemma too, where he, by being the first to make this move, he's going to reap all the benefits. And prisoner's dilemma, it's if one person acts and everybody else doesn't, they win. If everybody acts together, they all kind of sort of win. And if nobody acts, they all lose. So like this is what has taken place here. By them going and announcing it publicly, and then him personally disclosing. And in his disclosure too, he said he purchased it on average around $9,000. So I mean, he hasn't even really been in the space that long. Hence why, you know, most of us probably never heard of him until all this went down. But yeah.
No, you make a very good point that should be applied to central banks also. The first one that does it and announces it, it'll start, and we've been saying this for some time. It'll start a tidal wave of other ones doing it. So I do wonder which central bank will be the first one to announce. We're getting closer to that point, because once the corporations start to announce it, it's only a matter of time before one of these central banks.
Right, and some of the central banks
Steps up and
like,
says,
you know,
"Hey,
have a
we've been buying
requirement.
it for an average of $10,000 or $9."
Right, and some of the central banks have a requirement to disclose things publicly, but I would imagine that there are some central banks that already have it on the balance sheet and they've been quietly accumulating it, who don't have any reporting obligation, who are operating in, let's say, somewhat shady countries where the rule of law doesn't necessarily apply, and, you know, transparency and accountability isn't the request of the people, or isn't the purpose of the government. So again, I've suggested this to the Canadian Central Bank as well, and trying to identify as well, and this is something I did a fair bit of work around, was how much Bitcoin should they buy? Because if they decide, okay, I'm going to add it to the reserves, like, what's the number? How do they defend that number? And this is a question that many people, you know, don't really have the answer. They say, well, they can just look at how they deal with gold. And I'm like, okay, but, you know, I mean, and I posit to have an answer for that.
I think they should put it in a way that says we're going to own the expert. It's proper for a country to own 0.1% of all Bitcoin ever to be produced. I mean, that's the logic. You have to boil it down to something like that. Or, you know, there's X amount of countries on Earth. Thus, we have to own, and we have this percentage of the population. We should have this percentage. I mean, there's some mathematical formula they could come up. There's
exactly.
all sorts of.
I would posit that the world, like Credit Suisse, puts the world's wealth at about 300 trillion. So if you can identify, like that's the total wealth in all the world. So if you can identify, you know, what your footprint of wealth, maybe as a country might be, or even just as a bank might be, then understand your footprint. And then the great thing about Bitcoin is we know there's a full supply. There's only ever going to be 21 million. So if you take your footprint and just multiply it by 21 million, you get a number that you can defend against. And it's not going to be huge. It's getting more and more expensive. And there's going to come a time when they're not going to be able to do that. And that will show that hyper-Bitcoinization is taking place.
On that like button, dudes. It's now time for Surfer Jim. And guess what? Surfer Jim, you wrote an article and I linked to it. I have linked to it below. It's funny that we're talking about, you talked about the real estate, the value of real estate on the planet. and how much Bitcoin you would have to own to represent, owning, 1 acre, whatever it was. It's similar to what we were just talking about there. And that's linked to below, by the way, Bitcoin in terms of real estate. But what is your take on Michael Saylor making this announcement and the whole situation?
Well, thanks, Adam, for having me. I appreciate it. Michael Saylor, I've listened to a lot of interviews, and he appears to me to be the kind of guy who evaluates things very deeply. Similar to myself, I have to find the logic in things before I can understand it and get behind it. It's what put me over the edge with Bitcoin. Once I saw all the pieces connect, I couldn't not participate. And I think he got to a similar position personally. I think what motivated him was looking around at the business world and trying to navigate what he's personally going to do with his business holdings and then, of course, his personal holdings. And he was fortunate enough, we all know he dismissed it in 2013, but he was fortunate enough to see Bitcoin again, pay attention to it this time, but not just pay attention, literally deep dive into it, to the point where he was completely red-pilled and he had to convince everybody around him to open their eyes and really see it. Once he did that, very methodically, by the way, by forcing people to watch videos and reading things like Vijay Boyapati's bullish case for Bitcoin, those other board members and other important people that had to agree with him all had to get red-pilled to the same level. And you think about his purchase price for a MicroStrategy is around 11,111, he says, and his own purchase price was around 9, which means he was buying while he was convincing the rest of the people to buy for the corporation. So he was already in this deep, made a very, very deep personal commitment, convinced everybody around the business that had to be convinced to allow the business to take the same position. And I just think he's just a very methodical analyst who looks at this very, very logically. And back to your mentioning of the footprint, his footprint as a corporation, a central bank's footprint in the monetary system of the world. I do think that there is some logic to, if you are a central bank or a corporation, looking at where you fit in the current monetary system and then saying, if I wanted to be at the same level in the Bitcoin monetary system, how much Bitcoin would I have to own? I'm not sure if anybody could ever get the amount that they would calculate out to be the right amount because Bitcoin is very limited. But that is one way to look at it. And referencing the article I wrote about Bitcoin and real estate, I simply tried to divide up all the real estate on the earth by the amount of people. And if you did that, how much acreage would each person get? And then if you divided up all the Bitcoin, how much would you get? And turns out you'd get a little more than an acre or two if divided equally, and your Bitcoin would be about 230,000 Satoshis. And at the time when I did the analysis, that would have gotten you the equivalent of like 9 acres of real estate if you could have bought 1 Bitcoin for $9,000 at the time. No, it would have been more like 1,000 acres of real estate. So like if you had bought your share of Bitcoin at 230,000 Satoshis, you would have had the equal share of land. But if you bought a full Bitcoin, you would have had like 1,000 acres of land compared to everybody else on the earth. So it's really interesting to think about just buying a small piece of Bitcoin, what that constitutes in the world pool of available Bitcoin and where you land relative to every other citizen on the planet. As you say all the time, buying 1 Bitcoin, the 1 Bitcoin show is what it's all about. You get 1 Bitcoin, 10, 20, 30 years from now, either you or your heirs are going to be among potentially the wealthiest people on the planet because that percentage of Bitcoin will be much higher than almost anybody could ever get.
Oh, right. I love that long-term thinking. Hey, his article, again, is linked to below. Jim, we're going to stick with you on this question. So MicroStrategy, it was a huge story in September. I said it was the biggest story of the year. Saylor keeps on taking it to a new level every freaking week here. And yeah, I do assume he has like $1 million security force at this point. JW makes a good point. But what story is bigger? The PayPal story, that PayPal, now you're going to be able to buy soon cryptocurrency on PayPal. And again, you're not going to be able to properly own it, but still the 80%ers are going to get it thrown in their face that they could buy Bitcoin now. Or is the MicroStrategy story bigger? Which one do you think is the biggest story of the year right now, Jim?
I think it depends on where you are within society. So I did not know about MicroStrategy until I heard the news. I didn't know who Michael Saylor was either. And most of the world still doesn't, because they're not at that level of paying attention to Bitcoin or corporate treasuries or any of the other stuff that people in this community routinely are paying attention to. But everybody knows about PayPal. And if they just hear about that, this thing they've been using for years has this new thing called Bitcoin on it, just that alone is huge. So for the average person, I think that's much bigger news in the long run. Now, they're not going to understand it, as you just said. Currently, they're not allowing withdrawals, so not your keys, not your Bitcoin. But the marketing that brings to Bitcoin is huge. So I think ultimately it could be a slightly bigger story in terms of reach. But I think Michael Saylor's story is more important in terms of principles of people that have lots of money, that want to protect their wealth, that see the big macro picture. His story is important to those people. The PayPal story, just mentioning Bitcoin, is going to be important to the regular folks out there. So I think it's all good. Possibly the PayPal story hits more people ultimately.
All right. In terms of scarcity, I think, well, we'll see who takes off. That's yet to be determined, which story will take more Bitcoin off the market. I mean, if you combine what he personally took off the market and what his company took off the market, PayPal is going to have to take quite a lot off the market. But they should, well, if they don't practice fractional reserve lending. Anyway, let's go. What do you think?
Right?
What do you think's the biggest story, Kyle? PayPal or MicroStrategy?
I think MicroStrategy is the bigger story, because that shows the inclusion of reserves into it, and that can trigger massive amounts of money into it. The PayPal story, I don't know, like just in looking at the terms of it, again, is there going to be verifiability of PayPal's holdings of crypto? Will they actually be holding any crypto, or will they be taking contracts out on crypto? Yeah, I mean, I just don't really trust that solution. But again, PayPal, I guess they were big. I don't think they're as big as they once were in terms of, but I don't know. I don't really use them, so I don't know too much about that. But the MicroStrategy move was a bold, badass move that we knew was going to be coming at some point, and it's arrived. And we're 1 day away from 12 years since the Bitcoin white paper was released. So it's taken almost 12 years for that to occur. But yeah, that's incredible. The other thing is, Jim was saying that Michael Saylor is a very technical, researching, pragmatic person in his approach. But I would also say that it sounds like there's a spiritual element to it as well. If he is coming at it, if his declared purchase or average price was 11.1111, so that's just a high resonance number, and for that to be the official number is only a good sign, in my opinion. It's crazy.
Oh, bringing up that spiritual stuff. There's some people who really love that watch this. Pound that like button. We got all sorts here. All right, JW. I saved you for last on this topic, just in case you started to rip into PayPal nonstop. But what's your take on what's the bigger story, PayPal or MicroStrategy?
I think they're both big stories. I mean, it's hard to say. I think it's interesting that one is somebody getting converted that's really bright, right? That's the Michael Saylor thing, and getting converted in a really big way, right? Where he's putting in a huge chunk of his net worth and he's blazing the trail, and he's acquiring it personally and getting the company to acquire it. So he's created this roadmap for anybody with half a brain to follow if they've got some money. I mean, it's pretty brilliant. But on the other hand, PayPal is the enemy, and they've adopted Bitcoin now, and that might be better, right? We want the bad guys to start supporting us too, and. Would it be a big deal if Bank of America suddenly allowed people to transfer funds instantly from US dollars to Bitcoin and back again? Totally. That's totally a big deal. Partly because they suck so bad, right? And that's, I think, what applies to PayPal. I mean, they're one of the worst companies ever. The history that we have with them and WikiLeaks is, a stuff of legend. And they're the worst. But there was so much pressure even they had to at least support Bitcoin in some way. I do think they'll eventually allow withdrawals. I think that, it's pretty typical for companies to roll out like a very sort of limited thing. And I don't think they're any worse than Coinbase or a lot of these other exchanges as far as the threat of fractional reserves and that sort of stuff. I mean, I understand the community's like abnormal or significant hatred of PayPal. So, but at the end of the day, I think, they enabled Bitcoin purchases. I know it's in quotes. I think that they will enable withdrawals. And I do think that it's a big deal that more and more companies are adopting it. Cash App is great and they're huge, but PayPal's bigger, and they are the crusty old sons of guns that we need to take over. So I think both are really good stories, and I'm looking forward to just seeing more of the same. We need these pieces of good news in a super dark and depressing time in politics right now. So more the merrier.
Oh, man. JW with the positive take there on PayPal. Even I'm impressed. All right, let's move on. We're leaving this behind. I see there's some. We'll get to the question. Gregor Kovac sent $9.99. Thank you. Best guest in space. Shabbat shalom, dude. I freaking agree, man. Best freaking guest in space and Shabbat shalom. All right, Jim. We're moving on to you. Talk about something that was in the news. The Bank of Canada governor says digital dollar project moving past trial stage. If another country has one and we don't, that could certainly create some problems. So we want to make sure we're ready for an interview. Basically, Canada is getting closer to having a central bank digital currency. There are a lot of countries, like there's a race to be the first one to do this. And the stories are linked to below. And by the way, all three of these guys are linked to below. You should follow them all on Twitter. But Jim, what's your take on the central bank digital currency race? Canada talking about it in that article. Jim. Jim? Anyone hear me?
We lost Jim.
No, he should be. He's right there.
Jim, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I just realized. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sorry about that. The central banks, I think what's happening is smart people that high up in banking and in government they also understand Bitcoin, just like Michael Saylor. And I think the reality is they recognize Bitcoin cannot be co-opted, but their own central bank digital currency will allow them the same power that they've had with the printing press currently with money. And I think they're going to sell that as, good for society, but really it's just good for them. They'll be controlling people's money at a much higher level than they currently do now. So I could see the race for all central banks wanting to create their own digital currency heating up very, very quickly and very seriously among them. But I don't think it will ever really compete with Bitcoin. To me, it's just another centralized authority controlling money, which ultimately controls the lives of human beings and steals their productivity over time, because they can just make as much of it as they want, just like the current system. So it doesn't surprise me. I think in the end, though, humanity will win if they have Bitcoin as their money, not any central bank digital currency as their money.
I think we will definitely see a major, it might be than the 2024 halving. There'll be the 2024 halving. We're going to have plenty of central bank digital currencies out there. These things are all about monitoring and controlling the population, but the 80%ers will gladly accept it for some unknown reason. Well, convenience, and because they're told.
Yeah.
They do what they're told, as we have seen with so much in the current environment. But it is interesting that Canada is trying to really making a play on this. They're trying to stay on top. I think temporarily it probably will help them if they're the first one to do it. JW, what's your take on the central bank digital currencies, Canada, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what it seems like. Everybody uses the CBDC thing, like blockchain, a few years ago, and you never really know what the heck anybody's talking about when they say it. But I think there's two kind of major possibilities. One is that they don't roll it out to consumers, and it doesn't really affect consumers, in which case it's just a big nothing burger, because it's all databases in the background anyway. So there's nothing there. It's blockchain, at IBM or something. It's just completely nothing. But if they do roll out something to consumers and it has a few attributes, like the things that I'm looking for is, one is, do you have your own keys? Even if you're still trusting the central authority, is it a wallet-like experience? Or is it tied to your identity? Because right now, banking is all about your meat space identity. And that's not great for all kinds of reasons. So if they enabled us to have, even if it's just dollars, a tether-like experience, right? Where you still have a wallet and the keys are what control it, even though it's with permission. And if the payment is fast and irreversible, all of those three things would be epic. That would be amazing. And part of the reason that it would be amazing is that it would make buying Bitcoin so much easier. It's such a pain in the butt to buy Bitcoin right now because of the legacy rails. They're so bad. If I was to send you money right now through an ACH transfer, you can't be sure that I'm not going to claw that money back for like 6 months. So it's literally a 6-month transaction period. The consumers don't know that because they get a deposit in their bank account from their boss and they run off and spend it and they feel good about it. But 5 months later, if their boss wants to, they could say, oh, that wasn't authorized. And the default thing that the bank will do is reverse it, claw it out of your account, and you're screwed, which creates tons of room for fraud. And I don't know how these companies are even able to sell Bitcoin in that environment. So I think if something like that comes out of it, it'll be great. It'll increase competition between countries because you'll be able to easily buy. Right now, I'm sure through E-Trade or something, I can buy foreign currencies. But if everybody can do that, it's really accessible and easy, and you don't need identity. That'll be kind of an interesting thing. And I do think that if China rolls out digital RMB and nobody else does, obviously demand for digital RMB is going to go up because you've just created a global market, right? Somebody sitting in Zimbabwe can buy some digital RMB, and digital RMB sucks, but maybe it doesn't suck as bad as the local currency in Zimbabwe. So that's going to be interesting. But I think ultimately the thing that matters about it, if they do it, is that it will just make it that much easier to move over to Bitcoin and that much harder for somebody to argue against Bitcoin, right? Like right now, most people still think there's gold in the vaults. There's no gold in the vaults, right? But we're a small group of people that kind of know that. Once you've got an app and it's like Bitcoin, digital RMB, USD, Canadian dollars, and they're just different menus, that's going to start getting people to think like, well, which one's held as value more, right? I don't really want you to send me this one. I certainly don't want to have to accept, Zimbabwe dollars. I think I'd prefer US dollars. But actually, you know what? Bitcoin's only a button away. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But fast, irreversible transactions would be huge for Bitcoin adoption.
All right, let's go to the Canadian. What do you think about the Canadian central bank digital currency possibility?
I think it's been something that they've been looking at for a very, very long time. I know I was having meetings with them as early as 2014 around this. But like what JW was saying, if it will enable people to become more comfortable with digital currency, I do not believe that it will be a public blockchain that any wallet can basically, add the functionality to be able to generate key pairs for. The Chinese, the RMB that they're testing out right now is in partnership with the banks. So the banks are the ones generating the wallets. I think that's probably what's going to happen in Canada as well, as they'll partner with the banks. The banks will be able to generate the wallets. In terms of having a digital dollar, I think there's huge benefits to that. I mean, we can start looking at a lot of the inefficiencies of the current monetary system and the settlement that occurs within it, and we can see instant settlement of taxes, being one thing, especially on payments, when in Canada we have, provincial sales taxes and then federal sales taxes, and being able to, remove that liability from the businesses is one thing that, I've spoken at length about, that can really reduce the liability on businesses to act as tax collectors and tax holders until some later date, which ultimately just puts them in a tricky position because, if I'm like, Meister, here's $1,000, hold on to this, and you remit it later, like that just puts undue risk on you. So that's one of the challenges of the existing system. But if we have a digital dollar that has, programmatic elements to it, we can see all sorts of benefits. ideally, I want to have it in the wallet. I want to be able to take payment in it, and I want to be able to make payment and utilize the benefits of the global exchange networks and decentralized exchange networks to be able to make a payment using Bitcoin and have the Canadian merchants settle in dollars. They receive their subtotal, and the government receives their cut of the taxes instantly. I see that's where it's going. But at a high level, they're not calling it blockchain anymore. They've dropped the term blockchain from it. It's CBDC. It's digital currency. So it really, whether it has a public element to it, is questionable. The censorable element to it is pretty much guaranteed to be censorable. Is it private? Is it permissioned? Absolutely. Will it operate globally? I don't know. There shouldn't be any reason that I shouldn't be able to send dollars being in America up to Canada using that. But will a business down here accept it? Probably not. That's one of the things that the central banks are very concerned about, and and above the central banks, the geopolitical planners are really concerned about a sovereign nation issuing their own currency that the world can adopt because they don't like their currency, or their currency is a terribly performing currency, and they'd much prefer to have the allure of stability that a Canadian dollar might provide. So there's lots of things to consider with this. Overall, I think it's just there's a lot of pressure on their behalf. I remember Payments Canada wrote a report about 4 years ago saying blockchain, it's just not ready. But again, they are existing gatekeepers, and they don't truly want to work with disruptors, and they want to keep their business lines intact. So of course they're going to say that. But ultimately, the Bank of Canada has a decision to make. And if they choose to release a public wallet that everybody in Canada can use, that is going to be a major threat to the deposits of Canadians within the banks. So it's a very fine line. There's lots of political ramifications, societal ramifications to the release of it. And that's why I think there's so much study and discussion going on for years now around it, but we haven't really seen anything launched. We did see the RMB get launched in Shenzhen last month, where they airdropped $1.5 million with a caveat that you had to spend it, basically a test amongst the population there, and I believe it was very well received. But again, this is, there's two sides to the story, but overall positive for Bitcoin.
It could be a way for federal governments to put private banks out of business. That's one way that they could go with this too. Everyone would have a account with their Federal Reserve, or the equivalent of. So you wouldn't need private banks anymore, which would be unfortunate, I think. Another great point you brought up is that if these digital currencies from these big, powerful countries are truly global, then yeah, why in the heck would you still be in your third-rate fiat anymore in your third-rate country? And so I do think they will be global, and I do think a lot of tin pot dictators are going to lose control over the printing ability in their countries, because their people are going to opt into maybe US dollar coin or Canada coin or Japan coin or whatever. So if you're living in excuse me.
And there's also the challenge too that they're facing competition now from the rise of the stable coins, both like Tether-like stable coins and synthetic stable coins. So they have to do something, and they have publicly declared that they're afraid, they're concerned about the growth of these networks. It's still very early, but they're gaining momentum, and it's very difficult to combat a rising tide.
It'll be very interesting to see how it develops. Again, the best way to just sit back and relax and enjoy the battle is to own Bitcoin and just see all the other, let the tethers fight the Canada coin versus the third tier coin. Oh, they're monitoring me with this coin. You stick with Bitcoin, you're cool. But we're entering a golden age. And of course, something we left out is the corporations making their own coins also. Facebook will soon have its own coin. That's going to be competition. So I love the competition. I love it. Compete, don't complain. I have no problem with all these things happening because I'm in the best one. I have confidence that Bitcoin is the best one. So let Facebook have it. Let Canada have one. Let Tether have it. Whatever. Okay. Before we move on to the election stuff, does anyone else have anything to say about this?
Yes, I do actually. I wanted to ask JW what his opinion was about You mentioned the idea that you can have final settlement in a digital central bank digital currency. I'm of the thought that the average person is going to want reversible transactions like they can with their credit card, when they don't believe it should have been sent and they want to reverse it back. And that type of functionality certainly puts too much control in their hands. And what Kyle said about extracting taxes automatically, again, programming something into your money that you don't get to control is not really a great feature. That I think a lot of people aren't going to like that kind of thing. I'm just wondering, JW, do you see a way that you can have final settlement with a central bank digital currency where they really are not controlling it, like with Bitcoin?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It definitely is just a policy decision, right? Like it's not a technology thing. They could do it right now. I think big picture, all the stuff that we would be worried about with central bank digital currency, we have now, right? We have absolute surveillance. It's completely
exactly
in the United States with paper money. If you do, and the other person deposits it, they're going to be asked who they sold the car to, right? Like if it's above $10,000 right now, they're constantly dropping it, and they're constantly printing more money. Like they just printed, they're publicly saying like 22% of the U.S. money supply increased over the last few months. If history is any guide, I would say it's probably close to 100% because they always lie. They always understate how much money they've stolen from people. So as they do that, as they print more money, they don't even have to decrease the amounts, right? Like there's a concern about this new rule that's going to make the travel law where you have to report current transactions outside of the U.S. or across border down to a certain size, bring that money down. But just naturally, that's constantly coming down. And there's a reason that they got rid of the $10,000 bill in the U.S., right? They say it's all because people are doing, drug deals and stuff like that. They can do very subtle things like that don't seem like that big of a deal, but make it completely impractical to use paper cash. And then you're using Visa and your debit card and all these things. And all of that stuff is being fed to the NSA, right? Like the NSA has a major tap into every single internet service provider of any size, right? There's like a room in the data center where cables split and they go out. We know all this stuff from Snowden. And we know that, like, for example, if some Russian oligarch uses his Visa card, we know that data comes to the US, right? And goes into a Visa data center, which goes directly to the NSA. So it's not as if all of these like surveillance systems and the fact that it's all, your bank account can be shut off and all of these things that are terrifying. We already have all of that. But it's a good point. Like a lot of this is just policy decisions. And if they wanted to, they could give you the option of creating an account right now. Like maybe you have an account that has your, $100,000 in it, and you don't want to risk any transactions coming out of there not being reversible. And then you have something that is, it's got $5,000 in it and it's completely irreversible. And that means that you can actually buy some shoes on Amazon, and Amazon doesn't have to charge you 15% more for those shoes because of the chargeback risk. There's no technology reason for them not to do it. But I think what this kind of represents is not really an improvement in the technology that central banks are using and our payments infrastructure and all of that, as much as a recognition that Bitcoin enables all these user experiences that are really hard to live without. And I think over time, whether they call it a CBDC or whatever, they're going to have to start behaving more and more Bitcoin-like just to be able to survive, right? I mean, there's a reason that the Chinese want everybody outside of their border to be able to hold digital RMB. And they're not saying that's the reason, right? They're saying, oh, we just want to enable new technology. But, we've seen enough scam coins go around at this point. We know that they're absolutely looking forward to foreigners holding these things. And giving them value, because then they can print more and then they can spend them on actual goods, right? It's the Litecoin scam, right? But it's just on a nation state level. So we know that that's what's going on, and I think it's great that they're having to look more and more Bitcoin like. And I do think irreversible transactions will come eventually, probably before these things die. Although, I mean, what's cool about the Saylor thing and the PayPal thing and even COVID, which I wish I hadn't said that word, but even that, it shows that like there is this tendency for technology to take a long time and be kind of frustrating. And I've seen this in my career a lot. I want to pull my hair out by the time something gets adopted. I think everybody is absolutely nuts for like driving their laptops into their office and home again and not having any face-to-face meetings, right? But then something happens and finally the masses adopt the technology. So I think we're definitely seeing that that's going to play out with Bitcoin. It's going to be, frustrating. It's going to come along and then all of a sudden, boom, there's going to be some events that just put it over the tipping point. So I think, this is definitely along those lines, but you're right. It's policy decisions. It's not technology that I'm hoping to change.
Right. Excellent. Well, let's talk about, we're talking about the government. Let's talk about what's coming up on Tuesday. There's a big election. And for the last 2 weeks or so, Bitcoin's price, we've all been very happy. For all the fiat freaks out there. It seems like we're in a new, it seems like it's going to be 2017 again very soon. And we've all got big smiles on our face. But at the same time, I've been saying there is one obstacle that seems to be out there, and that is November the 3rd. We all experienced what happened on March the 12th when Bitcoin the whole world financially freaked out. Bitcoin is going to be fine over the long run, but I have been saying that November 3rd could be a day of another freak out. So that's how I want to put the question out there to you guys. What do you see? Do you see November 3rd being a turbulent day? Do you see there being an outcome in the election? There is no outcome. Will that cause a financial panic? Or will maybe Bitcoin if things go crazy? So I'll start with Kyle, because you've got a slightly different way of looking at things. You're a citizen of Canada, but who knows, in California you probably can vote for like 8 times if you want to. But what is your take on the situation with the election and Bitcoin, and are we going to see some turbulence here?
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't have a crystal ball on this one. It seems like both sides think they've got completely locked up. One of the threats is a contested election that drags on for a while. I feel like the signals coming from the media have been kind of preparing for that. Yeah, I don't really have too much to say about that. My goal was to actually be out of the country before the election took place, but it looks like we're going to be in the country now. So, I'm just going to kind of, like any good anarchist, just enjoy it.
All right, that is a very good take on the situation. You believe the polls are false?
I don't trust polls. I don't trust big research. I don't trust mainstream research at all. I think in my actual experience, so I'm right now in my Blockchain Across America RV, and we have traveled 6,000 miles since June and been all across the country. And I will say, like, personally, I have met, I'd say 9 out of 10 people that I've actually met and engaged with are for the red team. And that's just kind of my sentiment. And I feel like generally people are super pissed off about the whole, pandemic that's going on. Oops, sorry. I don't know. It feels like blue team wants to encourage more fear, and feels like red team doesn't want that much fear. So I don't know. I just saw an endorsement from Jack Nicklaus yesterday, which was pretty cute. I love Jack. He's a great golfer. He's been an inspiration for me my whole life. But yeah, I don't trust. To answer the question, I don't trust the polls. No.
All right. Jim, are you prepared for a contested election and financial mayhem? What do you expect on November 3rd?
Well, I'm totally prepared because none of it affects me as far as I'm concerned. I don't recognize the government's authority over me. I don't recognize the voting process, but I have no control over it. They can play all they want and try to decide who's going to be in charge of everybody's lives, but I control my own life, and it's not really going to affect me. But the puppet masters who control the whole show, they're going to keep as much controversy as they feel they can push society around with, contest the election. Sure, if they think they can get something out of it, I personally think they're all on the same team. They just make believe they're not. It's the central bank dominated team of the world. They pay everybody, they pay the news media, they pay everybody to toe the line and keep the narrative alive. It's very manipulated as far as I'm concerned, because the money is broken. People that control the money control everything, including the lives of billions of people across the planet. That gets fixed with Bitcoin. I don't think the election's going to change anything for the way society works, but Bitcoin will. So will there be turmoil? Probably. If it's a very close election, it's going to be a nightmare, because both sides are really going to dig their heels in. And of course, if Trump wins by a landslide, the Democrats will consider it rigged, and probably the same the other way. So yeah, a lot of turmoil coming. I'm just going to go surfing.
All right. I like that attitude. But do you think the Bitcoin price could fall? Do you think we could see another March 12th type of situation in terms of the financial markets?
Financial markets as a whole, I suppose. I don't think Bitcoin would go down that much this time. I think everybody panicked last time because this worldwide virus, really everybody was afraid at the very beginning, and I think people were very unsure. An election, I just don't think is going to have the same overall effect on the value of things. And even if the market were to have a big correction for some reason, I don't feel like Bitcoin would have as much of a correction. And even if it did, I think it would bounce back a bit quicker, as it's kind of been doing all year. Every dip in the market, we see a slight dip in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin bounces right back, sometimes way ahead of the market. So I'm not terribly concerned overall, but anything can happen, as we all know.
All right. And before we get to JW, there was a question out there. He asked me if I participate. Raw Power says, "Do you participate in elections? Do you think your vote counts?" I am registered to vote in the state of Maryland, which I can predict in the year 2024, the year 2028 will go Democrat, just like it will this year. So it doesn't matter who I vote for there, but I did vote. I did vote for Trump in the Maryland election, but my vote does not matter at all. But I did do it. So, JW, what is your and some states in Pennsylvania, your vote might count. Some of these states it's real close. In Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, but in the state of Maryland, where I'm from, or the state of California, where where Kyle is now, no, your vote didn't really matter. But
same with New York, my vote doesn't count here at all.
Yeah, same thing in New York or New Jersey. It's predetermined. I mean, you could say right now in the year 2024 in New Jersey or New York, the Democrat has already won. It's not, but JW, are we going to see some Bitcoin turbulence on Tuesday? What's your take on this?
I think it's possible. I mean, my normal answer to these sort of questions is I don't care. It doesn't matter. You should be holding Bitcoin for, several years, not several weeks. But there is something that's kind of changed recently in my mind, and that is, and I think the Saylor thing has had something to do with it, where I was hoping we would get people to the point where they're like, all right, everybody's going to put in 1%, right? It's still going to be treated as a speculative sort of thing. Let's get the corporation to throw 1% into Bitcoin, the high net worth guys, and the little guys too. Let's get everybody to 1%. But now with all of the stuff, I mean, I guess the Saylor thing kind of capped it off, but with all the money printing that we've seen in response to the stuff that's happened this year, it's definitely not clear how valuable your dollars are going to be, right? So it really is becoming, I think, in my mind, more of a savings technology. And when everybody's got their savings in it and its purchasing power can still fluctuate so much, I mean, it kind of sucks. And I don't know what to say other than that. Yeah, it can fluctuate a lot, but the dollar is definitely going down, right? There's no question. It was going down probably at 4 to 6% in previous years. We could easily see it going down at 20%, right? I mean, they said they increased the supply by 22%. So if, all other things being equal, and there is more demand for cash with all this uncertainty, but all other things being equal, you would expect your purchasing power to go down by 22%, right? Because it's not going to be offset by population increase or anything like that. So, it's a tough question for me now, because I can't say that I feel good that there's not going to be a lot of volatility and it couldn't drop a lot, but I also can't give my, standard suck it up buttercup, that's not how you invest answer anymore. So what I would say is, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world all the way around. Hopefully we can get through this period over the next few years. I don't think it's all the team red and team blue stuff going on. I think that's a reflection of some major economic shifts, right? Like the US was the superpower. China and India just can't help but matter a lot more than us in 50 years, right? So we are going to see that 2 billion population make a bigger impact on the world than our 350, 400 million. It's just a matter of how that transition takes place and who's on which side during the process. And it's going to be ugly. And I think that our best hope overall is that we all transition into Bitcoin instead of transitioning from one group of slave owners to another. But it's going to be tough between now and then. So I think, hodl your Bitcoin, let it do what it's going to do, and trust God to get you through it, because it's, there's just too much uncertainty.
Very, very good point. No matter what turbulence happens, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. Remember that, people. Remember that. And it will be nice to get through the election season, because I think once that's passed, Bitcoin will not return to anything below the 5-digit realm. But we shall see. But I do think I think Tuesday is the events around Tuesday are a threat to Bitcoin's temporarily put below 10,000. Now, it's not gonna be as dramatic as what happened on the 12th of March. But just prepare yourself, people. But remember, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. Johnny NY, thank you very much for the $10. You say, thank you, Adam. Now I can say no to anyone. Now, what's he referring there? When you were in the Bitcoin overlay, you gain the confidence in yourself. You can say no. You don't have to go along with everybody just to get along, so you can keep on getting paid. Okay, that's part of independence and freedom and being an individual and understanding Bitcoin. You can say no because you're not going to lose your wealth. You might lose some supposed friends, but when you start gaining that confidence in no, you know that you are in the Bitcoin overlay and you're valuing your wealth in Bitcoin. All right, well, let's go to something that JW tweeted. We're running out of time here, but I wanted to discuss this JW tweet. Discrete log contracts, which are smart contracts built on Bitcoin, or DLCs for short. You had a tweet out there, JW, 3 years ago when everyone was freaking out about Lightning Network. I said it was too early to be more than a critical education for investors. Today, I'm saying DLCs are going to get mass adoption within 2 years, and it's going to be crazy. Okay, smart contracts on Bitcoin, mass adoption, 2 years. What's this, W?
Yeah, so DLCs they're called discrete log, or it stands for discrete log contracts, but they're basically, like, you can think of them as a fancy multi-sig, like a fancy 2 of 3 multi-sig or something like that. But what they enable is they reduce trust on arbiters, right? So if I was going to buy a pair of shoes from you and you're going to ship the shoes to me and I'm going to buy them for 0.001 Bitcoin, we could use a third party, right? We could do a 2 of 3 multi-sig setup where you have to use 2 keys in order to spend the money. And so if we agree, I receive the shoes, then I can sign and release the funds, you can sign and you have them. If we disagree, they weren't the right color or whatever, and you don't want to send me the right shoes, and I don't want to send them back, then that third person gets to decide, right? So they have the third key. They pick a side and they decide who gets the Bitcoin. Were the shoes actually delivered or not, sort of thing. So that's a real simple smart contract. It's been in Bitcoin for a long time. And in theory, we could do bets, and people have done bets, right? You see them on Twitter pretty regularly. I bet Trump's going to win, and we could pick a third person between us to make sure that neither one of us cheats and lock up that Bitcoin and make sure somebody gets paid. So it's possible, but with discrete log contracts, the risk and the incentive for cheating and a lot of other things go down. So I won't try to even do a good job explaining exactly why that is. There's a good talk by the SureBits guys on how it works, but the end result is that gambling is a lot easier on Bitcoin. It's a lot safer. And the reason that matters is that it's not just like betting over little things, right? You can have prediction markets grow out of that, which everybody's been excited about. And a lot of that excitement, we can thank the guys at Augur and a few other scammers for taking a lot of passion and excitement around something that could actually solve things like this this problem, let's see, how do I want to say this without hitting the flags again? This this inconvenience that we've all experienced over the last year. Part of the reason for it, or really what it is it's a disinformation campaign, right? There's not actually a problem there. I think everybody on this call knows that. But with social media and other things, people have been freaked out and they've given away a lot of their freedoms. Something like prediction markets could actually solve this problem, because people that know that it's BS can put skin in the game and bet that it's BS. People that don't know and are stupid enough to actually say it and put their money where their mouth is will bet against it and say, oh, this really is a real problem. And you know what happens after that? Stupid people get poor, smart people get rich. Next time, the stupid people can't vote as hard, right? Because they don't have those resources anymore. And in the meantime,
now too, guys. So in case that happens, mad love.
Okay. Keep on talking, Jay. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that, if when you do have the ability to bet on stuff like this problem, this health problem, let's say, that we've had over the last, what you end up doing is moderately intelligent people can look at that, and they predict elections really well, right? Like if you want to know who's going to win, you don't go to the polls, you go to the betting markets, because there's incentive to tell the truth, right? If you have insider information and you know about, let's say, for example, a laptop that's about to get put out, you can make a lot of money with that knowledge by making a bet that X person is going to win or Y person is going to win. And that is actual real data, right? It's not all this BS, social media likes or whatever. So that had a ton of potential. Unfortunately, the scumbags at Augur and other places took all of that real excitement and that real potential, and they used it to just fleece people, right? Just like the Ethereum guys used excitement around smart contracts in general to fleece a bunch of people and suck a bunch of resources away from working on it on Bitcoin. But what's cool is with DLCs, just like with Simplicity and Ethereum, we're seeing real solutions come to the marketplace because they actually take time, right? You can't just throw together a fancy website with some flash animation and screw investors. You actually have to do stuff. And so DLCs represent stuff like that actually being able to come to market. And I think that it's going to have a huge impact. I don't think that the health issue that we've had over the last year will be possible in 10 years because of DLCs.
Let's hope so. All right, we're going to get a conclusionary remarks. Kyle, you're first because your phone's going to die, man. Say any stories that are on your mind, what you're doing. Take it away.
So thank you, everybody, for this wonderful hour. It's been an incredible discussion. One of the other things that I saw this week too was that World Economic Forum Great Reset, where they issued, in the future, you're not going to own anything and you're going to be happy. It's like this dystopic messaging is so, just grinds my gears. But again, things are done in plain sight, and that's kind of what we gotta look to. If anybody who's interested in the plan, World Economic Forum has released a book called The Great Reset, where you can get insight into what they're thinking behind all of this. But yeah, as far as I go, I'm just living my life, building out SwissKey, trying to bring crypto to the masses, make things easy and accessible. Follow me on Twitter, hit me up with anything. I'm here to help, I'm here to connect, I'm here to serve. Deeply grateful for anybody who's watching, their attention, their audience. And back to you, Meister. Thank you, brother. Love you.
All right. And remember to vote 9 times on Tuesday, like all.
I'm not going to do that.
Okay. All right. Now, I do. All 3 of these guys are linked below, so follow all of them. All right, Jim. What's going on with you? Stories you want to talk about? Anything?
Sure. I'll mention a couple of things. Johnny, who left you $10 in the chat, if you look a little further up, he says, I have stacked it when Adam said to buy 10 BTC for 4,000. So Johnny's been stacking for a while, and that's why he could say no to everything. So I just thought that was interesting. Wanted to point that out. Yeah, I almost was outside like Kyle today, because right now I'll tell you what the buoy report says. There's a buoy 20 miles off the coast of Fire Island, Long Island, and the waves are 11.5 feet right now. So I am leaving when we're done to go surfing, my passion in life, and I do it as often as I possibly can. I don't wear a mask, of course. I have not worn a mask the entire time because it's a big ruse. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the world's money. Bitcoin is going to fix a lot of things. Bitcoin is going to straighten out a lot of politics. Let's see, what else can I say? I am just loving life. I am in the process of liquidating my life and turning as much of it into Bitcoin as I can so I could move that value into the future and enjoy it later in life. I suggest as many people do as much of that as they possibly can because Bitcoin matters, people. Bitcoin matters big time. Adam, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate getting to spew my crazy opinion about everything out to the world. Hopefully some people will like it and learn from it and fix their own lives for the better, like we are all doing. Bitcoin fixes a lot of stuff. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's good to get rid of those attack vectors that some call possessions.
Be your own bank. Look at that, my shirt. Be your own bank, people.
Everybody show their shirt. All right, and very good point. People out there, the tune is going to change. People say, why not put a 1% allocation in the Bitcoin, 1% of your wealth? I mean, Michael Saylor, whew, maybe he's changed that paradigm. Maybe he's changed that. I hope so. And I'm not giving financial advice, but I obviously have more than 1% of my wealth in Bitcoin, my Lord. And clearly you're going in that direction too, Jim. So awesome for you. JW, we'll let you have the final word here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always fun hanging out with you guys. I think as far as parting words, I'll just say it's going to be fine. You know, if your life sucks right now, it'll probably suck after the election. If it's good right now, it'll probably be good after the election. So there's a lot of tendency to overthink the importance of, it's like the stoic thing, right? Like Tim May is always good at kind of pushing this idea that, there's a lot of stuff out there you can't control, but most of the stuff that actually affects the way that you feel in your life is stuff that you can control. So focus on that. So learn to code, make a good contribution to your family, take care of each other, and stack some sats.
All right. Good pre-election show here. I'm just writing down some notes for next time. All right. I'm Adam Meister, the BitcoinMeister, Disrupt Meister. Thank you, guest. You rocked it. Everyone pound that like button. Everybody Shabbat Shalom. We do this Friday, every freaking Friday. You never know what time it's going to be at, but we'll be back, and you get a new show here every day. So tomorrow will be, who knows what we'll be talking about on Saturday here. Sunday will probably be Beyond Bitcoin or both. Who knows? Keep on tuning in. Subscribe to it. Retweet this. That's the best way you can support the show. And thank you for all the people who did the super chats and support financially. Have a strong hand. You will have the same amount of Bitcoin. If everything goes crazy on Tuesday, and if you don't do anything crazy, you'll still have the same amount of Bitcoin as you did beforehand. And that's how you value your wealth. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you very soon. Bye.